Now you can listen to Wine and Dine Radio while shopping at the grocery store or your neighborhood wine merchant. Wine and Dine Radio can be heard using your wireless internet on your cell phone. You're listening to iWineRadio. iWineRadio is a production of Food Tastes Better with Wine on the web at iWineRadio.com. Hey guys, I thank you for listening to iWineRadio, and we are still the only wine channel on iTunes Radio. If you go look under iTunes radio icon and scroll down to News and Talk Directory, and it's listed alphabetically, click on that and the stream comes up immediately. iWineRadio.com, where you can find links to individual guests. And if anyone's interested in advertising or becoming an underwriter or sponsor, please contact us at iWineRadio.com. We really, really appreciate your support. The more support we get, the more conversations I can have with fascinating people around the world, including you. If you have a story to tell that you'd like to share on iWine Radio, go to iWineRadio.com and contact us, and we'll go from there.
This is Alan Goldfarb. I am a wine writer, and I have a new column called Checking Lists, a critical look at restaurant wine, and you can go to tablehopper.com to see that. It's posted every other week. The next column will be posted February 8th.
There is no one out there that is writing about, critically reviewing restaurants' wine lists. Joining us today on Wine and Dine is a friend of ours for many years because he is a consultant and advises wineries and public relation projects. He's been a writer for probably all of his adult life, and he's a restaurant wine consultant. He has this new blog out on Table Hopper called Checking Lists, a critical look at restaurant wine by Alan Goldfarb. Alan, thank you so very much for joining us today. And I agree with you. This is just kind of, it's an irritation. And in some ways, it's almost amazing that people put so much emphasis on food, but not on the wine, and not on the beverage program.
Well, I absolutely agree with you, of course, being a wine people as we are, and it's been a source of irritation to me for years that wine is often overlooked. And I guess there are many reasons for it. One, everybody eats, but not everybody drinks wine, so that maybe is at the most primal part or reason for why wine is often overlooked. But as I wrote in my most recent blog, in which I talked about a sweet little restaurant in San Francisco called Heirloom, and receiving an email from the owner there by the name of Matt Strauss, who asked why don't restaurant critics, why don't they ever review wine also? And so I that was the inspiration for the column, even though I had been thinking about the subject for years and years and years. And as I write, the reason I think is because a vast majority of restaurant critics really don't know wine very well, and they certainly don't know wine as well as they know food. And I've often thought that wine people know more about wine than food people know about. I got that wrong. Let me start over. Wine people know more about food than food people know about wine.
Yes. And in this day and age, even though I'm a wine lover, and that's been the premise of iWineRadio, truly, when you go into an on-premise facility for dining, it should be the complete package of all beverages, and even bottled water. I mean, the whole 9 yards, including service. Just that attention to detail, specific to your menu, specific to your clientele, and there is so much is lost on that. I'm glad that you even mentioned the exception of Michael Bauer's Sunday restaurant review in the San Francisco Chronicle. He still doesn't write very much about restaurant reviews. The wine list in his restaurant reviews.
Yes. I don't know this for certain, but I think that Michael might be the only restaurant critic in the country who does at least attempt to review a restaurant's wine list that he's writing about. But even at that, it is a sidebar only, which means that it's really a small part of his restaurant review. But I applaud him for doing that. But it leaves so much wanting as far as I'm concerned, because it really is not a critique of the wine list. It's more a litany of which wines are on the list, and he almost inevitably talks about the pricing policy of the restaurant. And while that is an important aspect of it, it is not the gestalt of what the philosophy of the restaurant is attempting to do, and it just often lacks a viewpoint, and that's why I decided to develop this column. You know, you prefaced this part of our remarks, the conversation, that you think that even the water served could be part of the restaurant review. And, you know, there was only one restaurant critic in all of my years, and her name is Patricia Unterman, who is still writing. She owns a restaurant in San Francisco, and when she used to do restaurant reviews, she would often review the coffee at that restaurant.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And most times the coffee is pretty awful in restaurants. It's getting better, but she had the foresight to understand, as you said, it's the details.
Right.
That's what separates the restaurant from another.
Right. Yeah, Alan, okay, let me get your take on this. I think we probably both agree that wine is food, basically, and so it's always been just driven me crazy that these culinary professionals, when they go to culinary school, there is not more emphasis on wine and beverage knowledge and how to make that work with so in other words, I would like to see chefs in charge of the oversight of the beverage program and the wine program, and not a separate beverage manager, because people go to eat first. They don't go to drink at a restaurant. Mainly, they go first to eat, and then they want some wine to make it a special and more interesting experience. But I would like to see more direction come from culinary schools and people teaching our future culinary professionals to be more thoughtful and academic in their selection of wine and beverages.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more, Lynn. But let's take the high road here and begin this part of the conversation by saying food and cooking is a very highly technical discipline.
Yes.
And wine is as well, and there's maybe more information needed to really understand wine. So you have two complete and enormous disciplines that must be understood, and that's probably asking a lot of most food people, most chefs. I know that the graduate school of the Culinary Academy out here in the Napa Valley does emphasize wine. They do have several courses. I don't know exactly the extent, but I think it's more than most cooking schools.
Yeah, they're not
offer.
the norm. They're not. They're way a cut above everybody else.
Yes.
But Alan, still, when someone is reviewing a wine and they have it in their glass, they're talking about the way it smells and the way it tastes and the way it feels, and this is and the way it looks, the senses. And so a chef doesn't need to know, it comes from this area and it's made this way, but he could at least be looking, or she could at least be looking at combining it, whether it's complement or contrast, the different senses that he wants in wines to go with certain dishes.
Well, I think that maybe the best way to tackle what we have characterized as a problem is maybe just to train restaurant staffs really all about, does the wine go with the food, and does the food in the restaurant go with the wine that's on the list, and leaving out all of the other arcanery, the terroir, and where the origin of the wine. In that setting, perhaps it's not necessary, right. But boil it down to we offer this kind of food, and we're offering this kind of wine, and do they go together?
I think that's the bottom line. Well, I mean, for most people. And most people around the world are drinking and eating what's local anyway. We're so spoiled here in the United States. Well, Alan, can we continue this conversation? Every time, I'm happy to continue this with you. Alan Goldfarb, thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, very much.
Now you can listen to Wine and Dine Radio while shopping at the grocery store or your neighborhood wine merchant. Wine and Dine Radio can be heard using your wireless internet on your cell phone. You're listening to iWineRadio. iWineRadio is a production of Food Tastes Better with Wine, on the web at iWineRadio.com.
Hey guys, I thank you for listening to iWine Radio, and we are still the only wine channel on iTunes Radio. If you go look under iTunes radio icon and scroll down to News and Talk Directory, and it's listed alphabetically, click on that and the stream comes up immediately. iWineRadio.com, where you can find links to individual guests. And if anyone's interested in advertising or becoming an underwriter or sponsor, please contact us at iWineRadio.com. We really, really appreciate your support. The more support we get, the more conversations I can have with fascinating people around the world, including you. If you have a story to tell that you'd like to share on iWine Radio, go to iWineRadio.com and contact us, and we'll go from there.